Now, Hamas militants have released footage that appears to show two Israeli hostages being driven through Gaza City. They're said to have been captured during Hamas's October 7 terror attack against Israel. The footage has appeared as Israel continues its offensive in Gaza City, striking a high-rise building. The IDF says it will target a range of structures that it claims are being used by Hamas. Israel says it now controls around 40% of the densely populated city, despite an international outcry over the offensive. Let's get more on this from our senior international correspondent, Fanny Fashar in Jerusalem. Welcome, Fanny. Let's start with this Hamas video of Israeli hostages.
Well, first of all, it's very important to establish this is not the first time that Hamas militants have released propaganda footage of hostages that are held captive in Gaza. In fact, some of the hostages who've been released said after the release that when they appeared in these videos, they were told to do and say what they said in that video. And I think that is very important to establish this context before we even talk about what we hear in that video released today. And what we see, in fact, is it appears to be that one of the hostages is in a car. He claims to be in Gaza City. He claims to be in Gaza City with several other hostages, something we cannot verify. He goes on to say that he blames not Hamas militants for being held hostage, but the government here in Israel who doesn't help him to be released. And he's speaking about fearing for his life. Now, once again, this is not the first time we see footage, and one, of course, just wonders why Hamas militants even release footage like this. And, of course, the most obvious here is looking at the fact that at least 20 hostages are believed to be still alive. The hostages being a bargaining chip for Hamas militants is, of course, the motivation to increase pressure here on the government to make sure that they end the war in Gaza. And while this is happening, of course, at the same time, it's the relatives of these hostages who see these videos who are really suffering, because they see a sign of life of their relatives there held captive in Gaza for nearly 2 years now, but they fear for the lives of their family members because they just simply also do not know where exactly they are. And with the offensive escalating in Gaza City while there are airstrikes across various parts of the Strip, of course, people, also the ones who take to the streets, just wonder whether any of these 20 hostages are going to make it out alive. In the meantime, here in Israel, Prime Minister Netanyahu, but also the Defense Minister, Mr. Katz, are calling on intensifying even further the ongoing offensive in and around Gaza City. And one just wonders just how much more intense this can get, looking at the pictures there coming from Gaza, where you see massive destruction already in various neighborhoods of Gaza City, as well as across the entire Strip.
And almost 2 years into this war, this conflict, how do Israelis feel about the fact that it's still going on?
They're angry. They're angry because it's been nearly 2 years. In fact, yes, nearly 2 years, 700 days. That's being marked, in fact, today, tomorrow, over the weekend with various protests, people taking to the street. And they're saying 700 days, but there are still 20 hostages, at least 20 of them alive, and about 28 are believed to be dead at this point, who are also still in the Strip. And they're calling on the government that they've been calling for months now to end this war. Now, what I find quite interesting to observe here, covering this situation for nearly 2 years as well, that it's not only the quantity of these street protests, but also looking at the diversity of those voices. At the beginning of this protest, we usually saw families of hostages, We saw ordinary citizens, or people who are rather belonging or express themselves being rather favoring the political left wing of the political scene here in Israel. What we see here is people also from the Israeli military, reservists, also from the Israeli Air Force, who are expressing their frustration over the fact that they say they do not see a clear strategy anymore in this ongoing war. They're calling it an endless war, which only serves in their eyes for the purpose of Prime Minister Netanyahu staying in office. So a lot of emotions that are playing out on the street, while I have to repeat once again, Prime Minister Netanyahu and his far-right government is anything but impressed, because they vow to continue the war as long as they say Hamas does not disarm and does not fulfill the conditions that they are setting out there, the conditions under which they may end this war. But nobody's talking about ending the war here who is in power in Israel.
Thanks for that, Fanny. Senior international correspondent Fanny Shah in Jerusalem.